Excellent.
Sounds good.
My name is Josh Benoit, Digital Business Department here at EPLAN. This is our Open Line Friday series. This is being recorded. I want to let you know that if you don't catch all of it, you can catch it on demand on our YouTube channel early next week. Open Line Friday, of course, we do this not every Friday anymore, but we do it every other Friday to every 3 Fridays and give you a chance to ask questions about the things that we're talking about or anything that you have questions about with EPLAN in general. So if you want to, leave your questions in the chat. You can also raise your hand, and we'll get to those questions and talk about them. So I want to introduce our experts for this week, and I am by no means an expert. That's why I have to rely on such good so many great coworkers that I have. And then first off, I want to introduce someone who's been here at least once before, Pat. And Pat, I always ask you this. It's Muth, right?
That's correct.
Okay. You're an EPLAN account manager with us. So tell us, I always like to hear a little bit about how you came to EPLAN and your time over here. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. I'm Pat Muth. I am originally from Milwaukee. I'm actually now in the Raleigh area. I am an electrical engineer by education, an account manager by lobotomy. And so I started my career in Chicago and moved around the US a little bit. I've been in organizations all the way from very early telecommunications into, where we did our very early CAD stuff, and then went into sales, also in Chicago, and sold into, various vertical markets from semiconductor to systems design. I then migrated into physics simulation, and then saw an opportunity when I was on the East Coast to join EPLAN. And surprisingly enough, I've come full circle. So my first interview out of college was with Square D. And, so now I'm in the controls automation business now. And, it's very much like some of the other verticals that I've been in, just starting a little later. That's all.
Okay. What was Square D? I don't know Square D.
They were a controls automation component manufacturer.
Okay.
And surprisingly enough, it was for sales too.
So finally you just gave in. You're like, well, EPLAN, we can do it. I can make this work.
I had to give up my union card.
Also on the webcast today, we have Paul Goleniak, who's been on, golly, Paul, I don't know how many times you've been on here, an application engineer and team lead with EPLAN, and a guy that knows a lot more about hockey than anybody else at EPLAN, and just an all-around awesome guy. So Paul, tell us about your history and about your journey over here to come to EPLAN.
Yeah, so I've been with EPLAN almost 20 years, going on actually 19 years. I started back in 2004. And before I started at EPLAN, my education was more on the mechanical side. And my first job out of, as I was just finishing up with school, was actually doing design and drafting work for a company doing the electrical controls drawings for control panels. And at the time we were doing a lot of work for General Motors, so I got to know a lot about the General Motors design standards before they had standardized on EPLAN. And so I got to learn how to get to monkey around with inside the cabinets and start to really learn about electrical, and started to actually fall in love with electrical, and after a few years of working on the drawing side and following projects with that company, I found EPLAN through a friend of mine that started with EPLAN. He had me come in and met Sean Mulherrin for the first time. He showed me the software, and I couldn't believe that we were still using the software packages we were using before, doing everything manually. And so I started with EPLAN. I was was involved a little bit with General Motors when they first standardized on EPLAN in the beginning, and I got to be involved with some of those meetings as well. And but yeah, I just kind of fell into the electrical area, and been having just enjoying the understanding and the different industries of and how different industries differ from electrical design, and all the panels seem to be created the same. So there's a lot of similarities between industries, but it's also cool to be able to venture out. I'm from Michigan, so a lot of what I knew before was mostly automotive, but being at EPLAN, I can see all the different industries that we interact with.
Whenever you met Sean Mulherrin, who's, I guess, kind of a big deal here at EPLAN, not only in the States, but at HQ as well, did you know who Sean was before you met him?
No, that was my first time meeting him. Yeah.
And after you figured out that he was a big deal, did you ask him for an autograph? I know that you've been buddies for a little while now. Since you met him, and it's going on 30 years for him. So 10 years into him being with EPLAN, you guys hooked up, or 11 years, and that's a long time to have a coworker relationship like that. That's been such a good one. This week's topic is.
Yesterday, actually, we had an opportunity to travel to a customer for the first time in a long time. I remember our first visit. He took me on to a company, to a customer, or to a prospect, and so yesterday we traveled together, and it was pretty cool doing kind of like old times, doing it together. So we both have totally different roles now, but it's very still connected with our users. So
how nervous were you for that first time you went with him?
You know what? I always was nervous doing a presentation in front of him. I never wanted to present the software in front of him.
It's got to be the hardest for anyone to start showing software, and then he jumps in and takes over a little bit. Yikes. Yeah. So this week's topic is about choosing the path towards digitalization for panel builders. And this is one that, Pat, that is something that's important to you. You actually came to us and you said, hey, look, I have a great idea for an Open Line Friday, and I really want to talk about this. So why is this something that you've been really as interested in and putting all this work and time into, really?
Well, in controls automation, panel builders kind of represent kind of a unique, I don't want to say problem, a unique challenge. And, they are essentially getting input from a variety of different formats. And for them to become digital is kind of challenging. And so I kind of looked at the problem as, okay, with a little investment, how can we make ourselves as digital as possible? Okay, let's try and find something that's high value, low impact to the organization, and we can start to get some value, because there's a lot of industry disruptions that are wreaking havoc with my profitability. Okay, so I've got a bunch of slides that I'm going to share here is to kind of like walk us through a conversation here on that.
And let me expand on something too while you're pulling those up. You talk about being low impact, but us saying that it's low impact whenever you start to begin to use a different software, no matter what it is, we can say that. It doesn't mean the customer is going to believe that or feel like it's low impact to them at the time. And it can be very daunting. So really what you're showing us today and what we're talking about is something that's going to help someone a customer that wants to come to EPLAN or has just changed the EPLAN and show them that low impact, it really, there's a realization of that it can be just that easy. The thinking about how hard it is can be overwhelming. And that's the daunting part of it. So that's really what Paul and Pat are going to talk about today, is getting over the hump and actually starting to do the work.
True. And really everybody's being challenged today by resources, whether it's financial, it's workforce. Those are the challenges that we have to deal with. They're real. And sometimes, you have to stay on track for things like revenue generation, profitability, and, things can get put off on that because there are attacks on those resources, and you still have to keep the lights on, right?
Right.
So I've got my first couple slides here are kind of hopefully going to set the tone for the need for digitalization. Like I said, I've been around for a while, and I use these they're kind of lighthearted. So if anybody knows who Billy Connolly is, he's a Scottish comedian actor, and he has a bit where he kind of talks about change. And so, today we know our customers, they're digital today. We buy everything online. We want, they want it when they want it, how they want it, and when they want it. Okay. And so he's got a line in one of the bits of, we want this and that. We demand a share in this, most of that, some of this, and all of that, less of this, more of that, and plenty of this. And another thing, we want it now, we want it yesterday, and we want more tomorrow. And the demands will all be changed then. So stay awake. And so what I'm really trying to drive out of here is we need a deeper platform in product development, manufacturing, for collaboration, because that change is constant. And that's one of the challenges that I am seeing, not only in our customers, but also in the prospects that I talk to. They're looking to take more control of their flow, essentially. Another one that I like to talk about, let me just, okay, come on, is the big need for data. Controls automation is still kind of paper-based today. And, we can talk about the virtual prototype, the digital twin, whatever you want to call it, but we need data. And without data, you're just another person with an opinion, and a lot of times, when, you go through controls automation for panel builders and stuff, and they're trying to turn a quote around as quick as possible, it's more historical data a lot than it is real-time data. And so a gentleman named William Deming kind of came out, with this quote, and I've always kind of hung on to it throughout my career. But those are the two things that I want to kind of just focus on as we go forward. The other one is, I said, okay, so I'm all about validation and verification. I'm like, okay, so what does the new AI model tell us about the business challenges for industrial panel builders and system integrators? So I'm including system integrators that do their own panel build as well, because they kind of have the same problems. And so none of this, it actually got validated very closely to a lot of the problems that I'm hearing. Supply chain disruptions, I think we all know that via COVID. And talking with a couple of prospects this week, and I'm always asking, how long, do you see relief? How long is this going to continue to go? And most of the answers I've been getting right now, they see it going on for at least another year. And that, that does cause problems quite a bit in terms of being able to get products out the door. Increasing competition. We all see data centers popping up, And then distribution centers also popping up quite a bit. I know in the Raleigh area here, we're just exploding with a lot of that. And so there's a lot of demand for automation right now. And that's all it's doing is increasing competition for all the control panel builders in the market. Also,
let me ask you something about that. But before you get into the third one, but we talk about increasing competition a lot. I think that people worry about that. They worry about competition, but maybe you can weigh in on this a little bit, both you and Paul. With increased competition, don't you think that businesses like EPLAN and with a great software, I mean the best software, they grow faster as well?
They definitely can address that need in a variety of ways, whether it's through productivity, whether it's just through increased design flow. I've got another one going and addressing that. I think the main one, though, that EPLAN does provide for our customers is differentiable value. Okay, so the amount of product of opportunity during the product development process, as well as the deliverables that they get, are much higher quality. And we can certainly provide the digital twin. And it's not only a benefit for the manufacturer, but it's also a big benefit for the end user, for the end customer.
Especially when it comes to having to recheck and double check and to make sure that the data is accurate, and utilizing the functionality of EPLAN gives us the opportunity to limit or remove any redundant checks that maybe somebody had to maybe do over the years in a previous in their current system. That EPLAN has that ability for our users in the projects to to manage the data, but also eliminate any of the redundant tasks that you would be doing on a daily basis to ensure that quality of information coming out. It's also instantaneous. The data is used in order to provide that information to other areas of the business. And I think that's a message that I've stated a lot with users, is that as electrical engineers doing our project, we're just really, we're in this vacuum. We're really focused on this project and making it look nice and pretty. I've got all the information, that I want. I want to make sure all my device tags are correct, but I'm not necessarily thinking about how can this project can help other areas of the business, and that data, that digital piece can help so many different areas, whether it's PLC programming, whether it's sending data to CNC machines, whether it's sending data to the ERP system for purchasing of components, and also for tagging wires and terminals. All that information can be easily provided out of the project. So I'm helping to support more of the business than just focused on the electrical engineering piece.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. So we look at number 3, cybersecurity threats. With today's focus also not only on the industrial IT solutions that are starting to become prevalent inside the control systems, but operational technology as well. So it's IT, it's OT, and so a lot more data is being made available. And so that's intellectual property to an organization, and it's open to cyber security threats as well. As we look in compliance and regulations, everybody needs, I believe in the US, pretty much to be UL certified. So to be able to do some amount of certification or certification virtually is big. And then, of course, the skilled workforce shortage it's not only on the engineering side a little bit, but it's also on the manufacturing side, and having solutions out there that can take advantage of, let's say, a less skilled workforce, but still be able to retain the quality and value of the manufacturing and the end product is very important. And then integration of new technologies. As I start to see, through offerings through Rockwell, simulation is starting to become prevalent inside of controls automation. When I say simulation, I mean simulation in the digital twin world. And so as more and more of those technologies start to creep into controls automation, that needs to be addressed. And, for companies that want to embrace that, and it's a resource drain as well. So this next slide is I drew from one of my customers, and because I kind of asked at one point in time, what ultimately what was the decision to move to EPLAN, or what turned the light on that you needed to make a change from what you were doing today? And these 5 bullet points are essentially what he told me. So commoditization of the core business, he's constantly addressing the how and the why. And then now, since I met with him last time, now he's looking to balance high margin business, as he called it, revenue growth, with low margin business, keep the lights on revenue. Okay. So, he does not want his core business to be commoditized. Competition, as I said earlier, maintaining competitive differential value. How do I stand aside from my competitors? And then also the need to stay ahead. Okay. What are the business impacts from industry disruptions? And how do I make strategic investments for the future without a business revenue disruption? How do I allocate resources, whatever they are? I know I need to do it. And then, attracting and keeping talented people. And part of it is, growth is augmented through productivity efficiency. And then also by, keeping the focus on differential value, meaning that you're attracting new people because you've got that differentiable value that nobody else has, and they actually want to learn it. Okay. And then the last time, as I said, I met with them, he was like talking, Pat, it's not about ROI anymore. It really isn't. It's all about flow. He wants to focus on moving his business from inception, or let's say purchase order, to out the door as quickly and as efficiently as possible. And right now with some of the disruptions from COVID, that's very challenging to do. So by keeping things as virtual as possible, as long as possible before you start the manufacturing process, he's able to manage his flow through his shop. Okay.
One of the good things about staying ahead is that we provide, in every new platform we provide the capabilities of staying ahead. And when you go from platform 2023, and then we have platform 2020 through to 2024, rather, that we're going to start the beta for very soon. These increases in our efficiency as we go, it helps these businesses so much. Mm-hmm. And they can attract talented people, but not only talented people, because we've talked about the lack of skilled labor over and over. I think this is probably the 4th webcast in a row where we've mentioned that the lack of skilled labor is a real issue. And the middle of last year is when it was really being addressed. And it's not only attracting and keeping talented people, but people that want to learn and grow, those that have a really high work ethic. I've talked to customers that have said, I hired someone with no experience and I was able to train them within just a few months to do what I wanted them to do and needed them to do on the shop floor. Because they come in, they want to work, and not only are they able to learn everything within a short amount of time, but they're very excited about what they're doing. They want to learn more. And so it's people that have high work ethic and that want to really do something that maybe they've never done before, and get in there and get their hands dirty, and creating that lean process along the way.
Definitely, definitely. So I thought I'd take also, Josh, we had talked a little bit earlier about, making some definitions for everybody. And, what is the digital twin virtual prototype that we always talk about? So I thought I'd just throw a definition at it, so that, we're all on the same page. And I think a lot of people do know it. But digital twin is essentially a virtual model of a physical object. It can span across the entire product development life cycle. And you can also put in real-time sensors within that model to simulate the behavior and take a look at the operations. Okay. The image I have here, I actually took from a previous life, the semiconductor and systems industry. And it's basically a system level V of where we start with a very high level concept of operations. And we go in through refinement from requirements and architecture into detailed design, finally into implementation. And then we start. So all the stuff on the left side of the V is really validation. Are we building the right thing based on what the customer's needs are? Okay. And being able to collaborate almost interactively, constantly during the product development cycle today is very powerful. And then as we get into implementation, where we're actually manufacturing, building something, going off on a commission, now we're getting into verification. So, verification is, are we building it correctly? So, we don't want anything that is hooked up wrong. We have the wrong component. So that is all on the right side of the V. And as the point also is, the cost opportunity relative to correction is so much cheaper in the digital world. Okay. So the more you can do there, the better off you are, so that once you're ready to commit to an implementation, it's the time frame is predictable, your costs are predictable, and you can get that product out the door. Okay.
There's probably nothing worse than making a mistake and not realizing it until it's too late. Whenever you have this representation right there in front of you, there is that validation of, okay, yeah, it's there, it's correct, and this is working for me, and it will work the exact way I need it to, and you could commit to it. Because we've all been there where we sign a contract and not knowing what we're stepping into. Whether it be for your house or your
last thing
car.
you want is to find, oh wow, I have the wrong component that the customer specified, and I found it during the commission phase for whatever reason. So,
I have an interesting story that I love telling. There was a time that I was out on site at a customer, and I was with I'll just say it, my good friend and colleague Alessandro. You guys know who that is. But he and I, we were out west in New Mexico, and we were visiting with a company, and we were talking about the digital twin with them. We were talking about ProPanel and the benefits, and the scary part about ProPanel is that it's 3D, and electrical engineers have never worked, they work in 3D. So it was always a challenge talking about, how they could take advantage of working in 3D, and how easy it is to also work in ProPanel as an electrical engineer and placing components. But more importantly, it's being able to see that panel in this virtual environment, and be able to identify any changes that need to be made without actually having to see it or actually, having anything built yet and drilled. So this particular day, we're in a meeting room, and there's 6 or 7 other people in the room, and they get called by their by somebody within the organization that they needed to go and see a panel that was actually sitting on at one of the sites, and they needed to go and look at this panel, and they needed to make some they were going to need to identify if any changes needed to be made. And so one of the major changes was this was a single enclosure with power and control in the panel, and they needed to make a decision on if they were going to separate the two. And so they asked Alessandro and I, do you want to go on a road trip with us and go see this panel? So I'm like, yeah, sure. So we get suited up in all this PPE gear because we're going out into the oil field area, and it's about a 30-mile trip down the highway. And so everybody, they all get into their own big 4x4 diesel trucks, and each individual person is in their own truck heading down the highway to go to this site. Alessandro and I are in a small little four-cylinder car headed down behind everybody else. But we get to this panel, and everybody's just standing around the panel looking at it. Everybody, again, they're all in their own individual vehicles, and we're just standing around this panel looking at it, and ultimately they made the decision, yeah, you know what, we probably need to move this component here and here. We're going to separate this into 2 panels. And when we got back to after over an hour, it was probably a couple of hours of traveling there, looking at the panel, traveling back. One of the things that we talked about was, there was a lot of time that was spent going back and forth, up and down the highway. Some, a car accident could have happened, or we could have done exactly what they did on site. We could have done that by pulling up the model in ProPanel and been able to show that same prototype, that digital twin of that panel, and made that decision right there in that room, instead of everybody having to leave and go see the panel and waste a half a day's time.
It's a
Do you think
great
that it's
story,
hard
Paul.
though do you think that it's hard though for electrical engineers to think in a 3D world whenever they've lived in 2D for so long?
Yeah.
It's like whenever you have that tunnel vision of what you've been doing for so long, and then you throw in something new, it's just hard to adjust your eyes maybe.
Well, it's nothing that they've had to they equate the 3D world to mechanical engineering, not electrical. And so right away, I think the fear is, oh well, I have to create these models, or I have to do modeling in these big 3D packages, or I have to learn all of these different features and functions of a 3D modeling tool. In fact, that's not true at all in EPLAN. All the models are already defined. It's just a matter of placing those models, those parts where we want them to go, just like they would if they were working in 2D. But there's so many more opportunities for efficiencies and quality control within that panel. Being able to get wire length calculated automatically for me, being able to have my wire ducts, identify with, a specific fill capacity, or, there's so much that we can do, be able to identify collisions and make sure that if I put this panel view, or if I put this HMI on the door, is my door going to close? Am I going to have any collisions on the back side of this? So there's a lot of benefits to working in a 3D without having to know how to work in, how to design in 3D.
Excellent. Hang on, I'm trying to change my slide here.
Those slides giving you a hard time, man.
There we go. Okay. So moving on, as I said earlier, we can look at the different panel manufacturer demographics out there. I kind of see two versions of that, and they each have kind of unique challenges. Pure play panel shop. I'm just a panel manufacturer. In a lot of cases, they're generally small organizations in size, minimal engineering staff. They're there just to manufacture. Customer input varies dramatically, all the way from hand-drawn sketches to, might be EPLAN format, might be a competitor's format in terms of a wiring diagram. And a lot of times their customer unit volumes are low. So the perceived need for capital equipment is low, which is, and I say the perceived need, I mean, if you're still doing volume throughout your shop, the unit volumes of your customers really don't matter. There's still an opportunity or, for automation on that stuff. So manufacturing today is still mostly manual. Okay, it's still paper driven, is what I'm saying. They have minimal influence on their customers' input or documentation. Panel layout is usually done by the customer in most cases in 2D. That's what they get. And then there's limited documentation requirements back to the customer. So their customers typically own, all the documentation. As opposed to, if we look at a system integrator with a panel shop, they're a little bit larger. They've got a larger investment in engineering staff. They typically will do the entire design in-house from the wiring diagram all the way down. They might even do some conceptual design. They typically will do the panels in-house, or they may work with a panel shop that is fairly local to them. One of the prospects I met with this week, was trying to get away from that. So he was struggling with his panel shop in terms of change management, collaboration. And so he was looking to bring in not the manufacturing part of it, but he wanted to bring in the design of the panel. So he was just supplying a wiring diagram to them, and he just couldn't get his product development turned around as quick enough for his customers. So he's looking to bring that in. System integrators typically will focus on vertical market segments where they can reuse their own expertise. A lot of times, their customers maintain the equipment and will require a competitor's format as part of the deliverables, and that's something we can certainly manage. And then some system integrators will also offer maintenance contracts for the equipment. Now, going and having that digital twin is a competitive differentiable value in being able to work with something like that. So how do we get there? Okay. Knowing that we still have to be profitable, balance the resources of everyday business. So there's an investment that does need to be made. And they, can impact financial impacts, workforce, and then customer impacts. If you want to show them a different deliverable, what's the adoption of that, or how open would they be to that? They need to understand, obviously, the business impacts on them as well. And as you said earlier, Josh, that wholesale change, I'm going to rip this out and put this in just to get to that digital twin, that becomes daunting and overwhelming to the organization. And so what I've seen is they know they have to do it, and they tend to look at customizing existing solutions for productivity without really achieving any type of digitalization. So let's keep doing what we're doing. We'll just customize it and make it go faster a little bit. Okay.
They just need to rip the Band-Aid off, right?
Just can't do it. And, as a result of that, it kind of makes them reliant on a resource that could go away. It's not really sustainable because it's really not part of your differentiable value to your customer to have that. If there's something off the shelf that you can get there, use that, because that's not your business. So what we kind of look at now is, let's focus on optimizing processes that would provide high value towards down that path, but a low business impact initially. Okay. What can we bite off now that's going to give us some value without disrupting my revenue generation, and enable the digital twin wherever possible? So whatever I do as a short term is really part of my long-term strategy. And then also I want to start to have a deeper virtual collaboration within the value chain. Okay. So not only just within, my customer, but also depending upon if I'm working with a pure play panel shop, all along that value chain, I want to be able to collaborate virtually so that I can manage change quickly and efficiently. And then also,
is this the same, Pat? Let me ask you: is that the same as are you saying that you're building out your ecosystem, or you're working well with your ecosystem in that way?
Yes.
Okay.
You go back to the first slide of we want this and that. I mean, that happens all the time, and being able to have that virtual model to do that, takes us back to the V model of saying, if I can do this virtually, it's much lower cost and it's much quicker to implement. So yes.
And the collaboration overall that you have with ePlan makes the capabilities of working within an ecosystem so easy.
Yes.
It's the same story that Paul could tell this story over and over and over, and to different people, and they would say the same thing, like that makes a lot of sense. If Paul is just there telling them the story whenever they first start, maybe it'd be easier for us. We should can that story, Paul.
So, and then be able to expand the digitalization focus over time. So, once you take that first step, okay, where's my next step that I can, that would continue to provide high value with, let's say, some amount of business impact, but now I'm planning for it. I'm going to start to reduce value leaks, improve productivity, foster innovation, because not only does the digital twin provide you validation and verification, it also allows you to do free what ifs during the product development cycle. Okay. What if I change this? That's free to do. Okay. And that fosters innovation within your engineering staff. So, we take a look at the EPLAN Digital Platform. Okay. So, we have a complete controls automation product development platform across one single database, all geared towards the enablement of a digital twin. And one of the values of being on that digital platform is that's a repository for all the data during the product development cycle. And so, if you remember back in that V, if we do the traditional engineering serial process, that data is used throughout, whether it starts conceptual and then gets refined, it's the same data. So you're not re-inputting data as you go through your life cycle. But it also provides us with opportunities for partial implementation. Okay. So, the classic example today with regards to logistics, I have customers that will start out in the 3D world and start to put in components. They'll bring up a back plate, start to just put the basic large components in there that they know they're going to use. And the whole goal there is to size the enclosure so they can get it ordered. And so that effort, that engineering effort that they just did is still valuable because we don't throw it away. You know, once you get to the point where you can order the enclosure, you can go back to start doing the serial approach of, you know, generating your wiring diagram and going forward, and all that component data, you know, the stuff that you put on the back plate is still there to reuse once you get to that refinement. Okay, so there is value in a partial implementation that's going to allow you deeper collaboration with your value chain and start to gear towards data-driven manufacturing. And so, you know, when we look at a panel builder that gets multiple inputs, okay, he's got no control of the inputs. With that data platform in EPLAN, we do have the capabilities of taking generic information. In this case, we're going to design in 3D without a wiring diagram. Okay, we're going to say, okay, there's a solution out there that was sent to you. Can you extract a vendor list? Can you extract a device or wiring list? You know, in Excel format, you know, very generic. And then from there, we can actually build a very intelligent 3D model that can be used to drive manufacturing. And it's not too much of an effort to do this. Okay, so we talked about the high value that we bring into the manufacturing side with the low impact of maybe I've got to spend 3 or 4 hours of engineering, or, you know, to assemble this enclosure and route it and then be able to drive everything into the manufacturing floor. Okay, so this is an example of high value, low impact, I believe. And all the data ends up being there for manufacturing. So, you know, once that model is in place, now we can start to drive wiring machines, NC machines. We have a product called Smart Wiring that really addresses a workforce issue. It's a tablet-based wiring platform. So there is absolutely no paper anymore on the manufacturing floor. Talk about virtual collaboration with eView. Now we can have that 3D model at the customer site before we even build it and start to evaluate various things at the customer site. Okay.
Smart wiring, by the way, is amazing. And we have videos about smart wiring and smart mounting. I think that whenever I saw it at Automation Fair this past year, I think it was November that we were there, that I didn't realize the capabilities of it until you're on site. And we had someone with smart wiring. I don't know if both of you know this. We had a smart wiring challenge, but do you know the fastest time to input 3 wires? Do you know the fastest time?
No, I don't.
Yeah, I believe it was, I was there.
Seconds.
I think it was like 30 some seconds.
Yep. That's right. And by the way, I hate to call him out. Kruno couldn't do it as fast as that person. 30 seconds, did it in 30 seconds. Because look, I've been with EPLAN for a little over a year now, and I don't have the experience that both of you have in seeing this before. I mean, this is an operation that would have taken about 3 minutes per wire.
Yeah. on top of actually, you know, cutting, stripping, you know, putting the end ferrules on, tagging, right. You know, all that was automatically done in just a matter of seconds as well.
Wow. Pretty amazing.
Yeah. And this is where you get back to that, the idea of skilled labor, you know, with being able to, you know, Nowadays, it's, trying to find skilled labor, or even, the training process, bringing somebody new into, into the panel shop, whether it's because of turnover or maybe it's because of growth. Having higher quality, more efficiency could also, maybe even give the company an opportunity to grow, which means they need to add more people. And so having a good onboarding process, having these type of tools available that make it easy to onboard a new electrician to build panels very quickly.
I saw a show recently, and at first I was thinking this doesn't, the show or this movie, it doesn't look good. It was a documentary. It doesn't look good for automation. It really painted automation in a bad light, where people were losing their jobs. And so you go through and you watch the whole thing, and it was really about the struggle of cultures. I forget the name of the movie. It was a company from overseas coming into the U.S. and changing the way that they operated. And so they relied heavily on the adaptation of automation in their business model. Okay. Everybody was afraid that I think they hired 800 people in the beginning. They were afraid that more automation, they would all lose their jobs. There was a lot more automation that came into there. And now they employ over 2,000 people, because the more you can do, the more people you have to hire.
Yeah.
And that's what's not completely understood. I feel like whenever you hear the robots are going to take over. Well,
yeah.
You got to have people there that operate the robots. You got to have people on hand to do a lot of things. You have to have a bigger workforce. You're expanding, you're getting bigger. That means more people. So you can't be afraid of that.
Yeah. Another value of smart wiring, and this goes back to, now I know schematic, I have no 2D enclosure drawing. If you can give me just a wire list from a host CAD system, we can bring that into smart wiring. And you don't have to, your labor force no longer has to understand how to read a wiring diagram. It's purely touchscreen, tablet based, to get you into the wiring process, which is, the long pole in the tent when it comes to the panel manufacturing. So this is probably the lowest impact you can do to get you some amount of manufacturing from a non-digital twin.
Yeah.
But it's there. So, if in summary, kind of, we look at, how to bite off that chunk, and panel builders and system integrators with panel shops are very unique in that they, the customer kind of drives them, as opposed to, let's say, a machine builder or a switchgear manufacturer, where it's a product that's being purchased. There's a variety of ways of entering that digital twin and building it up over time. Okay, so in summary, even a partial digital twin has business value, and right down through component procurement, backplate manufacturing automation, wiring component installation, all the wire processing, all the data that you can drive out of that 3D model is going to be of value to you. And, over time, you can start to show business value to your customers and maybe drive them into your own ecosystem with the business value that you can provide with what EPLAN can provide you. And so that's kind of where I'm at today. It's all I have to say. I welcome any questions or comments.
Larry did comment that he was there at Automation Fair and he saw the person do it in 30-something seconds, which I think we were all surprised.
It was quick. It was fast.
You might have been right there whenever they did it, like right in front of you as well.
Yeah.
Or you're pretty close.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate both of you coming on Open Line Friday once again and hanging out with me and giving some great information. And I hope you enjoy your weekend. For me here in Houston, Texas, we're all getting ready for the Taylor Swift show.
We'll have a good time.
Well, I have two boys. We're not going to the Taylor Swift show.
You sound like you're going to the next Iron Maiden concert.
Well, we are going to the Red Hot Chili Peppers in a month from now.
Awesome.
So we're going to go watch that at Minute Maid Park. But I saw that Taylor Swift tickets there were some sweet tickets going for about $3,000 or $3,500 per ticket. And I saw one mom put on social media, is there anywhere that I can get more affordable suite tickets? Because I really don't want to spend over $5,000 on both of us. And I thought, oh Lord, oh, that's a whole different world, man. That is like a whole. Wait for the DVD. Wait, not DVD. Sorry, that's me living in old technology. Have a good weekend. Thanks. I appreciate both of you.
Yeah, you guys have a great weekend too.